Hello again, it's the coach and the quarterback, and we're welcoming you back from halftime at the beautiful historic War Memorial Stadium. Phil, how'd you feel about the first half?
Well, Coach, I think that Claire did exactly what she had to do to get this thing kicked off right. So far, the speakers have been pretty good, and I feel like the crowd's been into it as well, Coach. I hope we can keep this momentum going into the second half and really make things interesting.
Yes, we did see some strong performances in the first half. And for those of you joining us today, we'll be asking a series of questions later on in this event. So please have your clicker device handy.
That's right. We want to know what you think. What should we be talking about for future meetings, and where should we meet? Those things you'll be able to let us know with your clicker devices.
Well, it sounds like the second half is about to get underway. Are you ready, Phil?
I'm ready, Coach. Let's
roll.
On a different note, what we're here to talk about today is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Because just now, I'd like everybody to close your eyes. So, what can you see? And imagine your world being a world that is visually impaired. And here we sit, and you just got to witness a fun event because you saw something out on the field. But there are those of us that we describe it to because they're visually impaired. So you can open your eyes now, because I want to give you a few bits of information. Part of the role that we have at the department as Chief Technology Officer is to create working groups. And one of the working groups that we're going to have formed, and that we're working with Division of Blind Services with Larry Whalen to talk about, is how we can be smarter about developing applications and things for the visually impaired. Because there's some state law that Kim will go over and talk to you a little bit about, or Larry may cover it, we'll see. And there are some things that all of us are responsible to do to ensure that our services and products that we buy are accessible to the visually impaired. So imagine your world for just a brief moment where you didn't have sight. And then imagine your world as we get older and our sight changes, or we see different things like macular eye degeneration, different things that run in different families. And then let's listen and think about what our world would be like and how can we help those who want to work and want to use our products and services, and how we can make them better. So with that, I'd like to introduce, I've got Kim Patterson, our Chief Information Security Officer, and she'll introduce others. Okay, I'm going to hand the mic over.
Okay. All right, today we're going to talk briefly about the legislation that just passed during the last session. As you know, the Accessibility Act has existed since 1999, and what it requires is for us it requires us to buy and deploy technology that is accessible to the visually impaired in an equivalent way. So the technology must be not only purchased, you don't just ask the vendor, do you have accessible technology? Well, I get to try. It's not only accessible, but the way you deploy it. You may buy technology that is accessible when you buy it, but then the way you deploy it, you screw it up and it's not accessible anymore. So that's why we've asked the speakers to come in today. We have Larry Whalen, and he's worked with the Department of Human Services only since 1986 in a similar kind of role. And then Rachel Buchanan is with, it used to be what we called Lions World, but now it's World Services for the Blind. During the last legislative session, we altered Act 1227 to point to federal standards for software applications, operating systems, web-based internet, intranet applications, and internet information applications. And what the law requires you to do is, not only are you supposed to deploy technology so that a visually impaired person accessing government services can access it, but anybody who walks into your office that is visually impaired will have the ability to work and do jobs in your offices. So that's not saying that you have to have the assistive technology installed, ready to go, but your equipment has to be ready to accept that assistive technology. We're also, DIS created the Technology Access Clause back in 1999, and that stands and it goes in every IT contract that we have, that we put out today. to let vendors know that it's a state law that you have to provide your technology that we may buy has to provide equivalent access to the visually impaired. Accessibility working group Claire referred to is going to start in the first quarter of next year. Larry Whalen and I are going to co-chair it. And what we're going to do, back in the early, what do you call the years since the 2000s? Back in 2000, there was a lot of work that went on with the Technology Investigation Center, and they helped agencies figure out how to be in compliance with this law. And I think now, we all think now, it's time for us to, as technology is becoming more and more graphical in nature, to make you aware of how the new technologies that we're deploying need to be chosen and deployed to be visually accessible. So, I think that's all. We're also going to be looking at having people come in and provide training in typical platforms, like we know that a lot of agencies are using SharePoint. And so we're interested in bringing in a speaker to talk to you about how to use SharePoint in your agencies in a way that's accessible. So our first speaker is Larry Whalen. Like I said, he's been with the Services for the Blind since 1986, and he's going to talk to us about accessibility and technology.
I have my slides right here in Braille, so I hope that Kim and I can work together. Kim asked me a while ago how long I've worked in this. I thought she meant technology. I worked in technology since 1986, but I worked for the Agency for the Blind since 1978. I started out as a counselor, and then I became interested in technology when speech synthesis came along in the late 70s, early 80s, and so I started working with computers then. And at that time, hold on, can you hold that? At that, I'm going to do this. At that time, I don't know. You know, when God invented blind people, they should have invented 3 hands. You never have enough hands. Never. You're always carrying something in one hand and a cane in the other hand. So, you know, so there's a...
Can I be your third? That's on the mic.
Oh, well, that'd be great. Okay. There, thank you. Now I'll just lean back against this glass right here. Okay. Don't open the window, okay? All right. Well, anyway, and I started working with technology, it was probably in the early 80s, actually. Believe it or not, my first computer was a TI-99. It had a little speech synthesizer on it, and the thing worked pretty well. You had to write your own software for it, but besides that, it worked pretty well. And I thought speech synthesis was just going to be the means to the end for blind people. I thought at that point, you know, hey, we're going to be able to do all kinds of jobs and everything. Well, the problem with technology is it continuously develops, and the access stuff has to play catch up all the time. And so we're staying just a little bit behind the times on that because of that. But a lot of things nowadays are accessible. The internet is pretty accessible. I can research just about anything and find out just about any kind of information I want to, just like anybody else can on the internet. But it's in the work areas is where we're really having the difficulty. It's the access to job sites and things is where we're having a lot of difficulty. Okay, my slide 1, I guess, is already up there.
Yeah.
And you can find blind and visually impaired people working in just about any aspect of life, except operating mobile equipment. Yeah, okay, that's a yeah. Now, access is being developed so that blind people can operate some mobile equipment and things. I mean, I don't know if you all saw back in January, it's almost a year ago now, a blind person drove a car at the Daytona 500.
We did.
The National Federation of the Blind and the University of Virginia developed a car with a computer in it, all types of sensors and all types of, what do you call them? Well, they used air for one thing, vibration for another, you know, devices that vibrate, you know. And this blind person was able to navigate the track at about 35 miles an hour. and a Ford Escort, I think that's what it was. It was a regular car. And by using all these features and everything, he was able to navigate. He avoided obstacles they put in front of him and passed a van that was there too. So that was pretty interesting. So in saying, you can find blind people working in just about every aspect of life. I mean, just about anything you name that doesn't require operating mobile equipment. If you don't want them driving trucks yet, you don't want them flying airplanes yet, but just about any aspect of life. Now, that's all right. I've probably already talked about this.
Computer accessibility rights.
Yeah, computer accessibility rights. Okay. Operating a computer, as Kim and Claire has already mentioned, there are laws that say that we have the right to have access to the computers, and it's not just becoming really a right nowadays. It's becoming an absolute necessity because in order to pay bills, people living by themselves that are blind, and people who are blind do live by themselves, they have to, they have to pay bills like anybody else. Paying your bills online and all that is becoming more and more the way to do it, especially since the post office is about to go under. So, and
Sorry.
Time for somebody to go to church.
I like that. Just for me. So it's not just a great thing for blind people to be able to access the modern day technology, but it's a right. It's a fundamental right that we have, and for federal government and state government is becoming a law, and a new law was just passed recently in Congress that says that all companies are going to have to make cell phones, or they're going to have at least one model. I think is what they said, isn't it, Liz?
Something like that.
They're going to have at least one model of a cell phone that is accessible to blind and visually impaired people. Now, I'm carrying an iPhone, and the Apple products have the voiceover on them, and they have built-in software on there that makes their stuff pretty accessible. Some blind people really like using the iPhone, iPad, iPods, the Macintoshes and all. I have an iPhone. I'm really not that fond of it, but that's that's probably because I just like to use a phone for a phone. I'm not one that really likes to surf the internet and everything on my phone. So. But a lot of blind people are really enjoying their iPhones because of the accessibility. Okay, means of access. All right. Everybody here knows there's two means of accessing a computer. It's input and output. And so what we have to be able to do as a blind person is we have to be able to read the information on the screen. If you can't read the information on the screen, you can't react to it. So you can't. So we have to be able to read the information on the screen, and that is usually done with either as a totally blind person, it's done with a speech synthesizer or a refreshable Braille display, or both. As a visually impaired person, somebody who just doesn't see well, it's done with large print software. And there are software packages that you can get that can enlarge the print, and then they have means of navigating through the website like that. And with the speech program, you with the speech program, you use the keyboard. Or with the Braille display, you use the keyboard, all kinds of keyboard commands and all. And that's, and really that works pretty well. I know, a lot of y'all probably know a few keyboard commands, and you find out how convenient they are to be able to use the keyboard commands pretty fast. The problem we run into, though, a lot of times with computers is using speech or refreshable Braille is trying to find what you're looking for. Well, with the speech programs, there's built-in commands. Well, you can use the Windows commands, or you can use the built-in commands to the speech program. And once you learn those keyboard commands, you can jump around pretty quick. I'm having trouble reading my Braille because it's collapsing under me. Okay, I've already mentioned the Magnification program, and I've already mentioned the speech program too, so just scoot on by. I'm trying to get through this pretty quick, leave time for Rachel over here. Okay, Refreshable Braille. Now, Refreshable Braille is very interesting because it's a device that has pins that pop up and down to form the Braille. I wish I brought one with me today and could have held up. But because it's hard to get that concept, it's like you have Braille, you can have 18 cells, 32 cells, 40 cells, 80 cells. An 80 cell Braille display would be about that wide. No, a little bit too wide really for fitting on your, I wouldn't want one that wide. 40 cells, and what you have is one line of Braille. So what you're doing is you're passing the text through that one little window of Braille. And if you have 40 cells, well, you're passing it through half of a line, and then the second half of the line. But it helps to get a better idea of how words are spelled and things like that. So it's pretty nice having a Braille display on your computer. The problem with them, they're expensive. I think the lowest cost 40-cell Braille display right now is around $2,800. And so they're pretty expensive. And for deaf blind people, that's the means by which they have to operate the computer. And speech program companies have bought up all the rights to the drivers for the Braille displays. So not only does a deaf blind person have to buy a $2,800 device, they also have to buy the speech program, which is another $1,000. It's pretty. This stuff is not cheap. It's pretty expensive. It's because of the low incidence of blindness, and they have a small market. Okay, number 6. Okay. Yeah, here's a good one. What is considered accessible? That's tough, and we ask that question a lot. I think Claire asked me that question yesterday. What is considered accessible? Well, it can be pretty obvious. I mean, if I'm sitting there at a computer and I'm moving around on the computer and it's reading things to me, you think, well, that's accessible. Well, to an extent it is, but it might not be totally accessible because the buttons might not work. Maybe the programmer or the developer didn't develop it so that it's going to react to the keyboard like it should. So the buttons might not work, or the links might not work on a website or something like that. So that wouldn't be fully accessible. Another thing that makes things difficult is clutter on the screen. Finding, trying to track down and find what you need on a screen is very difficult if there's a whole lot of information on there and it's not intuitive. It's not set up in such a way that we can use our keyboard commands to find them quickly. Like a website might not be set up in headings or something like that, or the buttons might not be labeled properly so we can find them. So, and then there's a lot of clutter on there and you can't keep up with your art. I put some examples on there like DHS share, Facebook. Facebook is it's accessible. I can't say it's not because I can use it, but it takes way too much time for me to use it, so I don't mess with it because I don't like. When I want to get something done on the computer, I want to get it done. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing it.
And Facebook does that to everybody.
Yeah, that's what my wife tells me too. She said, "Yeah, it's like that for everybody. Don't worry about it." Okay, I think I just got 7. That's what I did. Okay, now this is what Claire and Kim want me to talk about, and that's what I like to talk about too. Even though I said at the very beginning that blind people are working in just about every aspect of our of the workforce nowadays, and lots of things that would surprise you if I named them. I don't want to stand here and name them. But even though they're working in all aspects of it, still 70% of blind people of employment age are unemployed. That's 70%. And most of those people, I'm not going to tell you that every single one of those people want to work, but but I know the majority of them would like to work, and they would like to be out earning a living and not being on the taxpayers' rolls, and also it's rewarding to work. It's not just for the money, but it's rewarding to be able to work. And they would love to be able to work. But 70% are unemployed. And I think, personally, and I believe there are people here that would agree with me, that if we could make our technology accessible to blind people, that we could cut that in half real fast, because I know there's a lot of people like to work. Liz and I see them every day. Rachel sees them every day that would love to be out working. Are there any questions? If not, I'll let Kim have the microphone back.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Buchanan, and she is with the World Services for the Blind. We've asked her to come talk about the what they do there.
No, I think I can get it. All right. I'm multi-talented. So I am, like Kim just said, I am an instructor at World Services for the Blind. I was asked to come here and speak about the programs that we have there and what we do, because I don't know how many people know, really. I'm new to Little Rock. I just moved from Boston about 3 weeks ago. So it's all very new. So any mistakes are mine. My supervisor's right here in front of me, so hopefully I don't make that many mistakes talking about our programs. And what world, it used to be, like Kim said, Lions World Services for the Blind. Well, the affiliation with Lions World isn't as strong as it used to be, and the name is officially changing. Has it already officially changed?
Yes.
Okay, it is officially changed to World Services for the Blind. So that's the new name, and what World Services for the Blind, I'm going to call it WSB from now on because it's just a mouthful. What WSB's mission is to educate and employ people who are blind and visually impaired. And that can be someone who's blind from birth, it can be someone who has lost vision as an adult, even as an older adult in some cases. So what we have basically is two larger programs. We have pre-vocational and vocational. And the pre-vocational obviously trains people on things that don't necessarily apply to the job. So they may apply to daily living skills or whatever, Braille. What I'm going to talk about mainly is the vocational programs, because that's the area where I work, and that's also directly applicable to what we're talking about today. So we have 8 or 9 professional programs that train people for specific things. Although, like I was discussing with my supervisor, Johnny, earlier, we try to make each program a little bit flexible so that it can change and develop as technology changes and develops. One of the professional programs is desktop support technician. So this is a program where the students go and they have training. All of these have to do with computers and technology. They get their A+ certification and their Net+ certification, and they're prepared to work in a situation where they could be a desktop support technician. There's the Assistive Technology Instructor program, and that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I'm the Assistive Technology Instructor for the students who are training to be instructors. And what they're doing is they're not only learning JAWS, which is a screen reader, and it's a commonly used screen reader that reads things on the screen like Larry was talking about. They're also learning Zoom Text, which is a screen enlargement program. And those are just kind of brand names that I'm throwing around, but they learn how assistive technology can work in a lot of situations and how it can be, how it changes. They're learning how to keep up with new things, and they're learning how to work with people out in the real world who are using assistive technology every day. And they can be pretty useful people to have around. At least I hope they will be when I'm done with them. There's 3 IRS programs that we do training on, and I'm not going to go into those because and those people basically, they go to the IRS training programs, and if they finish the program successfully, then they're already employed with the IRS as a blind person or a visually impaired person. So that's pretty cool because it addresses that problem that Larry brought up on his last slide, which was the 70% unemployment rate, which is a big deal. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There is the MOS program, which is the Microsoft Office Specialist program. And this just basically covers the Microsoft Office suite, Outlook, Excel, Access, PowerPoint, drawing a blank, Word. And it basically, they obtain certifications all of those areas. So they're able to problem solve, to troubleshoot any of those programs, and are pretty useful people to have around if you're in a Windows-based environment. Another program that WSB offers is a Microsoft Certified Professional Developer, which is being changed. I think the name might be changed to programming. And basically, what that is where they can learn, they have the environment, and they'll have the skills when they leave the program to program in a lot of different languages. And that, like everything else, like I said, they try to keep it flexible. They'll change the languages as time goes on, and yeah, they'll stay up to date with that. The last program is the MCSE, which is Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, which is changing to MCITP, and it's like alphabet soup. So, Microsoft Certified IT Professional. And basically, it's just training a person who's blind or visually impaired to become an IT professional, which is perfectly reasonable, and obviously we believe that, or we wouldn't be here, that people who are blind or visually impaired can work in any profession they want to. So that's pretty much what World Services offers as far as vocational programs. I do want to say a little bit, I don't have a slide for this, but just Larry just inspired me when he was talking about people who are blind and visually impaired getting jobs. I am a total technology geek. Like, I have to be up to date on everything. I love technology. I love knowing about it. And I think the people who are in this room are you're officially educated. Like, you know now, you've heard Larry talk, you've heard me talk, and you know now that, or you could take our word for it, that people who are blind and visually impaired can work with technology, and they can, be in the professional environment and be employed. So, it's your job now to go out in the world and, spread that, and know that even if you're not the person who's in charge of hiring at your job, whatever you do, you are now a person who can say, hey, I know that people who are blind and visually impaired people can do that, because sometimes people who are blind and visually impaired go into a work situation, and it's really tough to kind of let people be flexible or get the technology to work, because it rarely, as you all know, works the first time when you want it to do something new. So you kind of have to be flexible, give things time, and be creative and think outside the box so that accessibility actually comes to fruition. So you guys all know that now, so I'm expecting you to be supporters of employing people who are blind and visually impaired, because you know that with patience and time, accessibility in technology is possible. So that's it.